This video was made possible thanks to the generosity of our brilliant patrons. We are so thankful for your kindness. Hello everyone and welcome to another EDH gameplay video brought to you by Affinity 4 Commander. My name is Martin.
And my name is Alex.
In today's video we have a variety of deck strategies and a selection of lesser played commanders for you to enjoy. So without further ado, let's take a look at those opening hands.
Thomas is playing his Yargle Glutton of Urborg Voltron deck. His opening hand consists of Helm of the Gods, Vorok Battlehorns, Whispersilk Cloak, Demonic Vigor, Ancient Cravings and 2 Swamps.
I am playing my Brooderclad Telkor Engineer token deck and keep an opening hand containing Wing Splicer, Saheeli Rai, Izzet Signet, Phyrexian Processor, Followed Footsteps, Swift Watercliffs and Shivan Reef.
Danny is playing his giant tribal deck led by Samut, Voice of Dissent. His starting hand is made up of Arbor Colossus, Sunrise Sovereign, Boros Garrison, Sun Petal Grove, Swiftfoot Boots and a Mountain.
And finally, Dylan is playing a +1/+1 counters deck commanded by Pia, Imaginative Rascal and Toothy, Imaginary Friend. He keeps an opening hand containing Auron Frostfang, Kiora, Behemoth Beckoner, Hardened Scales, Washout, Rogue's Passage, Temple of Mystery and a Forest.
Thomas wins the die roll and starts the game by playing a swamp. He then casts Helm of the Gods and passes to Dylan.
Dylan plays a forest and casts Hardened Scales before passing the turn.
Danny plays a mountain and ends his turn.
I play Swiftwater Cliffs, gaining a life, and then pass to Thomas.
Thomas plays a swamp and casts Vorok Battlehorns. He then passes the turn.
Dylan plays Temple of Mystery and chooses to keep the top card of his library where it is. He then ends his turn.
Danny plays Boros Garrison, returning a mountain to his hand. He then passes to Martin.
I play Shivan Reef and cast Izzet Signet before passing the turn.
Thomas plays a swamp and casts Whispersilk Cloak. He then ends his turn.
Dylan plays an island and then casts one of his commanders, Pia, Imaginative Rascal. He targets Thomas with Pia's ability, allowing Thomas to search his library for Toothy, Imaginary Friend. Funnily enough, Thomas fails to find the illusion in his mono-black deck, and Dylan passes to Danny.
Danny plays Ancient Amphitheatre, revealing Arbor Colossus to have it enter untapped. Next, he casts Lightning Greaves and passes the turn.
I play an island and then cast Wing Splicer. I make a 3/3 Colorless Golem token and end my turn.
Thomas plays a swamp and casts Ancient Craving. He draws 3 cards, loses 3 life and passes to Dylan.
Dylan plays an island and casts his other commander, Toothy, Imaginary Friend. He then passes the turn.
Danny plays Terramorphic Expanse, which he immediately sacrifices to put a forest into play tapped. Danny then ends his turn.
I cast Saheeli Rai and use her +1 ability to scry 1. I keep the card where it is, everyone else takes 1 damage, and I then move to combat. I attack Dylan with my Flying Golem and Danny with my Splicer, dealing them 3 and 1 damage respectively. With nothing more to do, I pass to Thomas.
Thomas plays a swamp and casts Homicidal Seclusion before passing the turn.
Dylan draws for turn and puts 3 +1/+1 counters on Toothy. That thing's going to get really big really quickly. Next he plays Temple of the False God and casts Aestheticism. Happy with his board, Dylan ends his turn.
Danny plays Sun Petal Grove and casts his commander, Samut, Voice of Dissent. He then equips his shoes to his commander and moves to combat, attacking Saheeli with Samut. Saheeli's loyalty hits 0 and Danny passes to Martin.
I play a mountain and cast Followed Footsteps, targeting my Wing Splicer. I then pass the turn.
Thomas plays a swamp and casts Deadly Wanderings. He's really going all in with his one-hit KO setup. With nothing more to do, Thomas ends his turn.
Dylan draws a card, puts 3 +1/+1 counters on Toothy and plays Rogue's Passage. Next he casts Auron Frostfang and then moves to combat. Dylan attacks me with Toothy and I block with my Golem. Dylan then passes to Danny.
Danny plays a mountain and casts Crossing Grip, destroying Dylan's Asceticism. Moving to combat, Danny attacks Thomas with his commander, dealing him 6 damage, and then passes the turn.
In my upkeep, I make a copy of Wing Splicer thanks to Followed Footsteps, which also creates me a 3/3 Golem. value. Next I cast Shrewd Negotiation, exchanging control of my golem and Dylan's Toothy. Yoink! Moving to combat, I attack Thomas with my original Splicer, dealing him 1 damage, and then end my turn.
Thomas plays a swamp and casts Bubbling Muck. Next he casts his commander, Yargle, Glutton of Urborg, and enchants his frog spirit with Demonic Vigour. Still not finished, Thomas casts Inquisitor's Flail, which he then equips to the frog. He then equips Whisper Silk Cloak to Yargle, making it a 15-7 double damage dealing unblockable frog with lifelink, death touch, and shroud. Pretty terrifying if I do say so myself. Happy with his turn, Thomas passes to Dylan.
Dylan moves straight to combat, attacking Thomas with all 3 of his creatures. Thomas declares no blocks, given that Dylan's attacking creatures have death touch, and takes 6 damage. Dylan then draws 3 cards and moves to his post-combat main phase. Here he casts Collective Voyage, adding 2 mana to the pot himself. Danny joins in by adding 2 mana, and everyone searches their libraries for 4 basic lands and puts them into play tapped. Not yet finished, Dylan casts Washout, naming black. Thomas returns his commander and enchantments to his hand, and Dylan passes the turn.
Danny plays Rootbound Crag and casts Arbor Colossus. Next he casts Sunrise Sovereign and moves his Greaves over to the Colossus. Moving to combat, Danny attacks Thomas with Samut and the Colossus, dealing him 14 damage. In his second main phase, Danny moves his shoes back over to his commander and then ends his turn.
I create another copy of Wing Splicer, create another golem, draw for turn and put a +1/+1 counter on Toothy. Next I play a mountain and move to combat, attacking Thomas with Toothy and my original Wing Splicer. Thomas takes lethal damage, knocking him out of the game, and I move to my post-combat main phase. Here I cast Brass's Bounty, creating 9 treasure tokens, and then pass to Dylan.
Dylan starts his turn by casting Vigour, which synergizes really nicely with Pier and Hardened Scales. Moving to combat, Dylan attacks Martin with all of his creatures that are able to do so. Martin declares no blocks, taking 6 damage, and Dylan draws 3 cards from his Frostfang's ability. In his second main phase, Dylan plays a forest, discards down to 7, and passes the turn.
Danny plays Vivid Crag and then casts 100-Handed One. Next he casts Sun Titan, returning Terramorphic Expanse to the battlefield with his ETB, and then moves to combat. Danny attacks Dylan with his Titan, Colossus, and 500-Fingered One, and Dylan responds by casting Mystic Confluence. He returns Sun Titan and 100-Handed One to Danny's hand, my original Wing Splicer to my hand, and blocks Arbor Colossus with Vigour. Dylan then misreads the text on Vigour, missing the part where it says another creature, and puts 10 +1/+1 counters on the elemental. One of these days we'll have a game where nobody misplays, but alas, today is not that day. Danny then moves to his second main phase, sacrificing his Terramorphic Expanse to put a forest into play, and ends his turn.
Martin draws, puts a +1/+1 counter on Toothy and casts his commander, Brudiclad Telcor Engineer. Next he recasts Wing Splicer, making a 3/3 golem, and then moves to combat. Martin makes a 2/1 blue Mia token with Brudiclad's ability, and then makes all of his tokens copies of one of his golems. This leaves him with 14 3/3 golems, which have haste thanks to Brudiclad, and flying thanks to Wing Splicer. Well, that escalated quickly. Moving to combat, Martin attacks Dylan with 12 golems and Danny with the remaining 2 golems and Toothy. Danny declares no blocks, taking 14 damage, and Dylan takes 36, knocking him out of the game. Toothy then leaves play, given that his owner has been defeated, and Martin draws 7 cards thanks to the Illusion's ability. In his post-combat main phase, Martin plays a mountain and casts Dragon Master Outcast before discarding down to 7, and passing to Danny.
Danny starts his turn by casting Rampart Smasher and then moves to combat. He attacks me with all of his creatures, and I block Samut with Brudiclad and Sunrise Sovereign with Wing Splicer. Danny then taps Samut to untap Arbor Colossus, and damage then occurs. Samut and Brudiclad trade, Wing Splicer is destroyed, and I take 15 damage. In his second main phase, Danny recasts 100-Handed One, equips his Greaves to him, and then passes the turn.
Martin makes a 5/5 red dragon with flying in his upkeep thanks to the Dragon Master's ability, and then plays Inventor's Fair. Next he recasts his commander and moves to combat, making a 2-1 Mir with Brudiclad's ability. Martin then makes all 16 of his tokens into 5/5 dragons and attacks Danny with all of them, claiming victory for himself.
Well, that's it for another game. We hope that you enjoyed seeing my army of golems and dragons wrecking everyone else's life totals. Remember that you can help the channel in 3 quick and easy ways: clicking the subscribe button, tapping the like button, and leaving us a comment. I read every one. Also, be sure to follow us on Twitter and check out our Patreon page. Links to both are in the description. That's all for now. We'll see you next time.
Dragons.